Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 351. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Because we are still in lockdown in the UK as of time of recording, and honestly, I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon, I'm continuing the theme of how to get help from nature during these weird times that we're living in right now. And today's theme is going to be getting help from nature with our self-care. I'm very fortunate in that my life hasn't changed very much since lockdown. I work from home normally. My husband and I both work from home normally. So things are pretty much as usual. Obviously, some things have been canceled. Other things have been postponed. But basically, life is pretty much as usual. Obviously, when I leave the house to buy food, I notice that things are very different. You have to keep your distance. And when I go out for a walk as well, social distancing. But basically, things have been pretty much the same for me. And I think also I was very fortunate in that I had my 2 weeks off, my camping trip in nature, right before this happened. And that really helped me to reconnect with myself, reconnect with nature in a very deep way, because I was spending lots of time outdoors for 2 full weeks. And I think that got me into a great kind of headspace, mindset for the lockdown. So I've written a blog post about this lately, and I'm going to link to that in the show notes about what my experience was like and why I think that set me up to be in a good place during this time. But I think there's still a lot of things that we can do from lockdown or quarantine or whatever they're calling it where you live to take care of ourselves and to nurture ourselves. Getting help from nature with this. We don't have to do this alone. And I know a lot of people are struggling, and honestly, it makes me feel a little bit guilty that I'm not. But I know that's ridiculous, and I try to stop that feeling when I feel it. So what I'm going to do is share what I know, share my experiences to hopefully help you, whether or not you're struggling. Because I think it's important for us to all get through this the best that we can. Self-care, I think, is really important at this time because things are uncertain. We don't know when lockdown is going to be raised. We don't know what's going on. A lot of people have lost their jobs. They've been furloughed. These are very uncertain times. So be sure to take care of yourself and increase your self-care during this time. I mean, I've been taking baths rather than showers so I can kind of linger with some Epsom salts and a good book. I have been waking up earlier. I'm still on that really nice schedule that I've kind of come back from my camping trip with. I'm starting work really early, finishing work earlier, going out for a walk, or just reading a book at home, or really kind of increasing the things that I know are nourishing to me and things that I consider to be good for my overall well-being. So here are some ideas on how you can get help with nature, get help from nature with your self-care. We talked a little bit about these things last week with Cara, but I wanted to kind of go more in-depth into them. So at home, when you're inside, I know some people have issues with their immune system and can't even go outside or don't choose not to go outside because it's risky for them to even go on a walk and come into contact with people. So if you're at home and you can't go out, there are lots of things you can do. You can tend to your houseplants, take care of your pets, spend time with your pets, groom your cats, your dogs, or just spend time just stroking your cats. They're very nice and fluffy. Whatever pets you may have at home, spend more time with them. Sit in your bed and sit with your pets or read a book and sit with them. I don't know, but spending time with animals, I think, can be really calming. It can be good for anxiety, and it can be good for helping us to feel better. And it can be good for helping us to kind of slow down the difficult feelings and thoughts that we may be having. Pets are part of nature, of course. I know when I talk about nature, I tend to think about plants and trees, but pets are also part of nature. Maybe spend some time if you have crystals, maybe spend some time holding a crystal that you find attractive. Even if you don't believe in crystal healing, it doesn't matter. They're pretty things that, can be nice to have around. So maybe put some on your desk or put some in your, where you can see them. Look out your windows. And I think this could be a fun or interesting exercise to go to each of your windows, look out each window, and spend some time seeing what you can see. What trees can you see? What plants can you see? What flowers can you see? And really make an effort to kind of identify the greenery and other kinds of nature, like what hills can you see? What animals can you see from each window? Because I think that can help us to bring a little bit of the outdoors indoors through that connection, acknowledging all of the nature that we have around us that we might not notice. My cats spend lots of time in the windows every day, kind of chirping at the birds and probably wishing they could attack them. So our animals do this, but I think a lot of times we forget to focus on the nature outside of our homes that we can see through the windows. So if you are a bath-taking person, you can add essential oils to a bath. They smell good. Those are something that are, have come from nature. Foods. Eat natural foods. Eat whole foods. I know the word natural means nothing, but whole foods. Like eat plants. Eat animals, if you do. But eat real food. I know sometimes it can be tempting to comfort eat when we're stressed, but I think that eating whole foods, plants and animals can really be a great form of self-care right now. Make sure that we are feeding ourselves with the foods that are really deeply nourishing to us. I have taken advantage of this lockdown. Since I'm not exercising as rigorously as I normally do, I've changed my fasting protocol, doing a different type of alternate day fasting. So now, since I'm fasting a little bit more than I usually do, I'm extra conscious about what I eat when I eat and making sure that it's really good food. Usually eat healthy foods, but, sometimes comfort foods slip in there. So I think it's important now to focus on what we feed ourselves in terms of food. Plant spirits. And this is something you can do from home, even if you haven't had the training. So last year I did a shamanic plant spirit healing apprenticeship. So I was working on using shamanic journeying and calling in the spirits of plants for healing. But as you've seen, if you've read my book, If Trees Can Talk, Life Lessons from the Wisdom of the Woods, a lot of the stories from the trees in that book were about calling on the spirits of the trees for help. So even if you're at home, if you've done the exercise where you look out your windows and you see the nature and you see the things, maybe you have a favorite tree that you can see out in your garden or outside your fence. Call on that tree for help. One of the things that one of the trees in my book said was that we can give our worries to the trees. We can give our stress to the trees. We can give our anxiety to the trees. And the trees will take those negative feelings and transmute that energy into something neutral. So if you're feeling down, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling anxious, ask a tree for help. Give it a try. Even if you think you can't talk to trees, even if you don't believe in this, it's worth a try, So sit in a quiet place in your home or stand in the window where you can see the tree. You don't have to. And just speak to the tree, either out loud or in your mind, and ask the tree for help. Tell the tree specifically what you would like help with. If they can take, your sad feelings, your depression, your anxiety, please, take these feelings from me and transmute them into something neutral. And please help me to reconnect with joy or happiness or love or whatever it is that you would like to be feeling more of now. I think this is a good time to experiment with calling on the plant spirits and the tree spirits for help. And this doesn't have to be trees. I mean, you can call on a plant in your garden. Maybe you have a favorite plant or flower or shrub or something in your garden or outside your house. Call on that plant and ask if it can help you. So those are a lot of things you can do at home to get help from nature with your self-care. In your garden, spend some time outdoors. And I think gardening can really be a form of self-care. It really helps me kind of slow down and calm down, and it's very relaxing. So, go out into your garden, do some weeding, do some other gardening, tend to your compost, something I need to do. I haven't watered it in ages. It's probably all dried out. Tidy things up. Do a little bit of yard work. Whatever feels good. That can be really, really calming. And it can give you something to focus on. And I really find that kind of getting my hands dirty in the soil is really grounding. And it just really makes me completely change my perspective when I'm feeling stressed or anxious. So garden work, light garden work, you don't need to remodel your entire garden. Do whatever feels right for you. But getting out in the garden, maybe repot some houseplants. I don't know. But getting your hands dirty can be a really lovely way of getting help from nature with self-care, because it grounds you and it calms you down. And it can be really deeply relaxing. So just do stuff in your garden. Sit and read a book in your garden. If you have a big enough garden, set up a tent outdoors. My garden's not, unfortunately, conducive to that, but I've seen lots of people going camping in their garden, and I think that is such a great idea. And if I had the proper place, I would have my tent set up there, and I'd be out there all the time. I'd probably be sleeping out there sometimes. Especially if you have kids, that can be a fun way to spend some time outdoors. Even if you don't have kids, it can be a fun way to spend some time outdoors. You can, set up a tent and read inside it, or just relax and have your self-care outdoors in your garden. So getting out of your house and out of your garden. Here in the UK, we are allowed one form of exercise outdoors a day. So for me, that's been walking. But you can walk, ride your bike, run, whatever. The only thing you need to keep in mind is that you need to keep your distance from others. Aim from quiet trails away from towns or villages. And use that as a way to reconnect with nature, get some exercise, and just rest and refreshen your mind. The other day, I was really, really focused at work, just getting lots of stuff done, and I kind of got to a point where I was burnt out. And so I just finished what I was doing, and I went outdoors, and I went on a walk. And it was just so lovely. And I noticed so many details that I often don't notice. Because it had been my first time leaving the house in days, I noticed things that I hadn't necessarily noticed before. So when you're outdoors, when you go on a walk, pay attention to the details. Look at what flowers are blooming. Maybe you don't know what all the names of the plants are, but you could get a book. Or not, it doesn't matter, but notice what flowers are blooming. Those yellow things, those blue things, those purple things, those white things, whatever. But notice them. And notice as you go on your walk, what types of habitats these different plants grow in, these different flowers, and notice how often you see them. Maybe you see some violets at the start of your walk, and then you see them about halfway through. Pay attention for how many times you see the same flowers, because it helps you to get to know them, and it helps you to notice them in the future. Pay attention to what animals are out. Are there squirrels? Do you see foxes? What about farm animals? Are the lambs out? Have they started lambing yet? Are there new lambs? Are there no lambs? How has nature changed since you were last out? What's blooming now that wasn't blooming before? What's starting to finish its bloom? Look at all the things you see. Look at the details of all the things that you see as you walk. Touch the trees as you go by. And again, you can ask the trees as you're walking to take your stress, to take your anxiety, to take your depression. Obviously, talking about depression and mental health, if you are on medication, continue that. I'm not saying that the trees should be a substitute for this. Do whatever mental health care you normally do. And in addition, ask the trees to take away your stress, your anxiety, your sadness, whatever it is that you want to get rid of. And ask them to help you open up to what it is that you want to receive. And like I said, pay attention to the details. Look at the colors. I was on a walk yesterday and I happened to look off to the side and there was a little trail going down into the woods. The trees were there, but just beyond the trees, there were these green plants. I don't even remember what they were. They might have been dog's mercury, but they were really, really bright. So the way the light was shining on the plants from the other side of the little wood, they looked electric green. It was so beautiful. And I just loved how the greenery was so lit up underneath the trees. It was just really lovely. So look at all the different colors. Look at how the sunlight plays on the trail between the trees, the clouds, what the clouds look like. What do the trees look like? Are the deciduous trees that have gone naked for the winter, are they leafing out yet? Which trees have leaves? Which trees have buds? Which trees never lost their leaves? Pay attention to the details of the trees, the plants around you. That can be really calming. And as I was walking and as I was noticing all these details, there was a point where I was walking down this trail and there was a fence and someone had woven kind of a chain of little yellow flowers into the fence. And it was just really lovely. It was reminded of this coping technique for anxiety that I've read before, where you pay attention or you acknowledge 5 things that you can see around you. So I can see that yew tree. I can see those daffodils. I can see those violets. I can see the clouds. I can see that farmhouse down there. Was that 5 things? I think so. So those are 5 things that I saw on my last walk. Acknowledge 4 things that you can touch around you. So you can touch a tree. You can touch the gravel, the dirt of the trail. You can touch a plant, a bush that's next to the trail. You can touch the petals of the flowers. Acknowledge 3 things that you can hear. So maybe you can hear cars on a faraway road. Maybe you can hear birds. Maybe you can hear the squirrels running up and down the trees. Acknowledge 2 things you can smell. And a lot of times, it's hard to distinguish smells when we're out on a walk, but you can get up and close to things. So, get down on the ground and lift up a handful of leaves and soil and smell it. Maybe get close to some flowers and see if you can smell them, or just smell a tree trunk. But get closer to nature so that you can smell it. And then finally acknowledge 1 thing that you can taste. If you've brought some water with you, you can taste some water or some other drink. If you've brought some tea in a flask, you can taste that. Or just see if you can taste anything on the air. Probably don't recommend licking any plants unless you know for sure they are not toxic. But I can tell you that violets, for example, which are blooming right now, are not toxic and those are edible. So you can pluck up a violet and eat that and acknowledge the taste of it. So I know this is a coping technique for anxiety, but even if you're not feeling anxiety, I think this is a really great way to connect with nature. And a lot of people are kind of getting criticized or getting in trouble for going out into nature and sitting because you're supposed to be having exercise. So people were asked to leave the beach when they were sitting on the beach. So I'm hesitant to say, sit next to a tree and relax because you're supposed to be only going out for exercise. So maybe don't do those things. But as you're walking on your exercise walk, you can do a lot of things to connect with nature. And I think this can be really, really helpful in terms of our own personal self-care. I did a podcast episode a while back about self-care, and I'm going to link to that in the show notes. Let's see if I can find this here. Yes, episode 313, how to practice self-care even when you think you're too busy. So those are some things you can do as well to get some ideas for self-care. But I really, really recommend that you try something new. Try getting help from nature with self-care. And do not underestimate the power of calling on the plant spirits for help. So whether it's a houseplant at home, a houseplant or a plant in your garden, or something you see when you're out on a walk, ask the plant spirits for help. And if you don't believe in that, that's fine. Do some of the other practical things that I have. You don't need to get weird with the plant spirits. But I think connecting with nature can really make a big difference in how we take care of ourselves during these times of COVID-19 and just the weird times that we're living in now, which are full of uncertainty and lots of difficulties. So I hope you found this useful. This is going to be a shorter episode than usual, but I would like to encourage you to get outdoors, get help from nature, or even get help from nature in your house, but call on nature, both practically and spiritually, to get the help that you need to care for yourself during these times. And I've been getting lots of messages from people. Got a message from a friend the other day who had read my book, who was saying, "Thank you so much for writing this book. I never knew I could talk to the trees, and now I do." And she'd been talking to a tree in her garden, and it gave her a message that was really helpful to her. Got another email from another friend, same thing, has really deepened her connection and her relationship with trees as a result of reading that book. So I really think that when we open up and connect to nature, it can help us in so many ways. So I would like to invite you once again to please connect with nature in these times, and please practice self-care. And feel free to get in touch and let me know how you're doing. I've had several people who are subscribed to my email list respond to my emails in the last couple of weeks, and just, I've asked people, please let me know how you're doing. I would love to hear from you. And it's been great to hear from people. So whether you're feeling good, whether you're not feeling good, whatever, feel free to drop me a line and let me know how you're doing. I would love to hear from you. You can email me at holly@hollyworton.com or find me online and get in touch there. And thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have any ideas for future episodes, please let me know. I would love to hear from you. Remember to visit hollyworton.com/351 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollyworton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.